Doctor. The year is 2020 and we're living in a time of uncertainty and confusion. And one of the things that is giving us the most consistency at the minute is the release of classic series Doctor Who action figures. But not only that, classic series action figures of companions that we've wanted to see on our shelves for absolutely years. What an unusual time to be alive. Welcome back to another Doctor Who action figure product review. In today's review I'm going to be taking a look at yet another B&M exclusive action figure collector set. In today's review, the companions of the 3rd and 4th Doctor set, featuring a variant of Sarah Jane, this time round from the 3rd Doctor era story, the Monster Of Peladon. Then we have Mary Tam as Romana One in her costume as seen within the Key to Time story, the Power Of Kroll. And then finally we have Lalla Ward as Romana Two from the Horns of Nimon, a rather unusual set of stories with some rather obscure variations of costume. The collector set, along with all the others as a part of this series, are available to be purchased from B&M stores throughout the UK now. The recommended retail price is £19.99. So taking a closer look at the packaging, at the very bottom we have the inclusion of the limited edition sticker along with the title of the set. On the side of the box we get the inclusion of the Doctor Who logo as well as a smart TARDIS graphic, and as always there is a large preview window giving a good look at the figures on the inside of the box. And then finally, flipping around to the back of the box, once again we get further images of all 3 companions available within this set as well as their names at the very bottom. And again, it would be nice if we had a little bit of text explaining a little bit about their personality or their adventures with the Doctor, simply just to bulk out the box a little bit more. However, for the most part it's simplistic and basic, which is absolutely fine. Here we have Sarah and the 2 incarnations of Romana out of the box, and the same thing applies to this set that applied to the previous set that was of course released during the summer. It is absolutely excellent that we get to see not 1 but 3 whole classic series companions to add to our classic series collection after wanting companions for so long. I still can't quite believe that we have both versions of Romana. I knew that we would eventually get a Sarah because Sarah is Sarah. However, Romana is one of those companions I just thought we would never get. How this set is not necessarily the best. I'm not going to over compliment this set to say the least. Of course, Sarah is a rather unusual variation, this time around from the 3rd Doctor era, and basically all 3 of these figures use pretty much exactly the same base. In fact, all 3 of them use exactly the same legs, which yes could be seen as a little bit repetitive, but to be honest I don't mind. I think that all 3 uses kind of work and they're all coloured differently. And of course, before we go any further with these action figures, I would just like to also talk about accuracy, because yes, these figures are pre-existing sculpts with brand new head sculpts added on top, and this is the best possible way to create classic series companions. These sculpts were not made to replicate these costumes from the 1970s, and as a result there is a number of inaccuracies, and to be honest I don't mind, because at the end of the day these figures can never be 100% screen accurate. So we might as well go in chronological order and firstly take a look at Sarah Jane Smith, this time round in her outfit from the Monster of Peladon. A rather unusual choice, and one that to be honest didn't even spring to mind. That means that we have a Sarah to go alongside both the 3rd Doctor as well as the 4th Doctor, which is kind of a nice touch. Now for the most part the torso of this figure is of course exactly the same sculpt to the one seen with the previous Sarah from Genesis of the Daleks and Revenge of the Cybermen. Has been painted completely differently, and of course the lower half of the figure uses the Sarah from the Sarah Jane Adventures character options range with the boots and the trousers. To be honest, it's not particularly that remarkable. The entirety of the coat has been sculpted in this rather glossy light brown plastic. We do have a number of details that have been retained from the previous figure, and of course the initial release being Martha Jones in combat uniform from Doctor Who Series 3. So we have the inclusion of this collar at the very top, as well as a number of buckles towards the side, and a series of buttons running down the very middle. We also have the inclusion of a belt running around the waist, and this does of course also continue onto the back of the figure as well. And as always with character options action figures, due to this being a material, they've replicated that look very nicely with a series of creases as well as a number of stitching lines. Also a little bit of paint application has been applied in an attempt to make this look a little bit like the costume seen from the story. So we have a little bit of a light brown paint application running up the top half of the jacket here and onto the lapel as well. Now of course within the actual story, Sarah is in fact wearing a jacket and it exposes a woolen jumper underneath that is a light grey, and a lot of people have mentioned mentioned that it would have probably been a bit better to use the jacket that was used for the Yaz and the original Romana One, because that had a shirt exposed underneath, and that was something that was also an issue with the original Sarah as well. They have tried to replicate the jumper underneath because there is an ever so slight paint application of light grey just below the neck. However, I suppose once again it isn't accurate, but I don't particularly mind that much. Moving down to the lower half of the action figure, we have the inclusion of the trousers, which again have a creased and wrinkled material effect and have been painted an ever so slightly lighter shade of brown that has a slight hint of a purpley colour in there as well. I have not really too much to talk about here. We have the inclusion of pockets on the back, and other than that, it is pretty boring to say the least. Finishing off for the costume, we have the inclusion of the boots, which are exactly the same for all three companions within this set, and as a result have the inclusion of a buckle detailing on the side. This hasn't been painted, especially in the case of this figure. It may have been nice to have a silver highlight on the buckles, just to make overall the costume look a bit more exciting, or maybe even have the buttons on the jacket painted silver. Just anything, any bit of detail please, because it's not the most exciting figure in the world. On a more positive note now, moving up to the likeness of Sarah Jane. Of course, this uses exactly the same sculpt to the one seen within the companions of the 4th Doctor set, which was of course the genesis of the Daleks version of Sarah, and of course there is a few inaccuracies in itself due to the hair being ever so slightly longer, but again that doesn't particularly matter. As for the actual paint application itself and the likeness to Elizabeth Sladen, absolutely superb. The actual paint application is very sharp and crisp. I particularly love the detailing on the eyes. We have a lovely eye white in the background, as well as lines at the top and bottom of the eye itself to replicate what is most likely eyeliner. Equally, we've also got some rather natural paint application on the lips, being a light purple, and then we have the eyebrows in there as well, which have been raised very much like the previous release. Now this is a similar problem because I've seen a number of Sarahs that look very, very alarmed indeed, so again I definitely recommend going into store and handpicking this set if you can, because there was some rather concerned looking Sarahs I seen on the shelf when I went to pick up this set. Turning the figure around to its side to take a look at the hair, once again it is an absolutely glorious sculpt. I love the way that we have the individual strands looping round, and then as we move towards the back we have a number of curls and almost bags as well towards the sides here. Again, further strands around to the back of the head, but a similar criticism to that of the original release, where it would have been really nice to have a little wash applied over the top of the hair just to really emphasise those curls a bit more, because at the minute it's just one blockish colour. There may be an ever so slight wash, but it is very, very subtle indeed. But that said, you can definitely tell who it's meant to be. The likeness is brilliant, and again, it's just a joy to have a Sarah as a part of our collection. So in summary for Sarah Jane, it's alright, it's not particularly the best figure in the world. The actual outfit isn't really that remarkable at all, it doesn't really have much detail on it, and it is generally for the most part a series of block colours, but that doesn't take away from the fact that the likeness is absolutely incredible, and it features a great likeness to the actress of Elizabeth Sladen. I know a lot of people were saying, oh, they could have done this version of Sarah, or they could have done one from Pyramids of Mars, or another story entirely, and to be honest, I don't think this is it for Sarah Jane. I think we're going to see multiple variants of her in the future, because after all, she's Sarah Jane Smith. So now moving on to the second companion of the set, and admittedly the one that we're probably all here for. It is of course Mary Tam as Romana One from the Key to Time season. Previously, within the last box set, we had a rather unusual variation of Romana wearing a very glossy pink top thing, and it was basically a pullover within the actual TV show. However, on the action figure, it was a rather leatherish looking jacket, which was completely inaccurate to what we've seen throughout the episode itself, and as a result, it wasn't particularly liked for TV accuracy, to say the least, but we kind of just went with it. It was a version of Romana, and if that meant that we got a version of Romana to add to the shelf, it was worth it, and if you wanted a more TV accurate one, I suppose you could customise one yourself. Now we have this second variation, and it is absolutely brilliant. It is of course Romana from the Power of Kroll, and as a result we have the base body, which is a normal Sarah Jane Smith. PVC piece has been added on top of the body, basically create the jumper that she wore throughout the episode. And very much like how I mentioned within the Unit 1975 review, this is a rather exciting concept and possibility for Doctor Who action figures in the future. In particular, for 1960s companions, because a lot of their costumes are considerably basic, with the exception of the likes of Jamie McCrimmon. The vast majority of Susan's costumes, arguably Barbara's woolen jumper, maybe even Vicky and Victoria from the second Doctor era, all of those costumes are considerably basic, and as a result could probably be recreated using a rather similar style of PVC like this, and the result will probably be considerably effective. Of course, due to this being a material, or at least replicating a material, it has your standard character options creased and wrinkled material effect, which is really effective and makes the figure look less plasticky. Equally, we also have the additional detailing of a collar here at the very top, as well as a few seams within the costume itself. There is also a little bit of paint application on this, including a light grey running down the middle from what I understand is most probably a zip. And then of course in the middle we also have the inclusion of a thick black paint application that is most probably replicating a belt. Flipping this around to the back, once again we have a rather similar design. We have the belt continuing onto the back and less creases this time round. We have the ever so slight suggestion of the seams there coming over the shoulders from the front, which is a rather nice touch. Of course, as always with these action figures, there is a little bit of an issue with using a base sculpt that was originally intended for another character. As we can see here, just underneath this has been entirely painted black, and of course on the original Sarah Jane, this was actual skin, and you can kind of see the low-cut top underneath there, as well as the sculpting of a necklace, which has now just been painted over in hope that you can't see it, and to be honest, I don't really mind. And then of course, as for the rest of the arms, once again we get pretty much exactly the same style, where the vast majority of it has been painted black in order to represent the material as seen on her costume throughout the Power of Kroll. To the left hand side we also have the inclusion of a watch on Romana's wrist, which again has been painted a standard black, which most likely wasn't a part of the costume back in the day, but it doesn't matter. Move down to the very bottom, and I would dare say that this is probably even less remarkable than Sarah Jane's costume, as we pretty much have black all the way. We have the trousers here at the very top, again exactly the same creased and wrinkled material effect has applied, and there is an ever so slightly lighter paint application on the boots, as well as the same detailing that was of course previously mentioned with the Sarah Jane figure, featuring the buckles there at the very side, but other than that there's literally nothing else to say. And then finally, for detailing and sculpt, moving up to that likeness to Mary Tam, and very much like how I said with the previous review of the companions of the 4th Doctor set back in the summer, this is an absolutely superb likeness to Mary Tam. They've got it spot on, and definitely shows a little bit of character and personality in there as well, as opposed to being completely neutral, which is always quite nice. The paint application on the face is considerably natural. Of course, we have some rather sharp detailing, in particular around the eyes, eye whites, as well as a thick black line running around the top to represent that of eyeliner, not too overdone and look considerably natural, and of course the lips have been painted a rather vibrant red. Skin tone this time round is ever so slightly paler, and kind of in keeping with the vast majority of character option skin tones compared to the previous version of Romana that was very oddly orange. I think I commented on that back on the previous review, but she did look a little bit unusual. I don't quite know why they did that, but I think it works a lot better on this release. Something else that has also changed is the hair this time round. I do believe that this is exactly the same sculpt. Where it's actually sat on the head this time round is a little bit different, and overall is a lot more effective. Of course, there was a lot of forehead on show with the previous release. This time round it looks a lot more natural and normal looking, to say the least. Turning around to the side, of course, we have all those brilliant details within the hair, featuring lots of different strands, in particular here down the bottom, lots of curls, and even more so as we turn towards the back of the sculpt. It's probably one of the best sculpts that we've had in quite a number of years. We even have a little bit of a wash that has been applied over the top of this, again emphasising those curls and bringing out those details even further. This is kind of the wash that I was wanting to see on the Sarah Jane figure, as having a wash over the top definitely sets off the sculpt a lot more. So in conclusion, that is Romana One, and if I'm going to be completely honest, I would dare say that this entire set is worth it for this figure alone. It is definitely much better than the initial release. Of course, overall the costume is a lot more screen accurate, and you can actually kind of get away with saying it is from that story, as opposed to being completely visibly off, much like how the previous release was. And of course the additional detailing that has been applied to the face really sets this figure above the original release. The sculpt is absolutely incredible, and yes, I'm really happy with it. I can't wait to display it alongside Tom. And then we move on to the third and final figure of this set, which raises the question, how many Nimons have you seen today? It is of course Romana Two from the Horns of Nimon, a rather unusual choice of costume, considerably different to the other version of Romana, meaning I suppose it looks alright on the shelf. It's nice for variety to say the least, and to be honest I struggle to think of any other sculpt that they could possibly use to create another one of Romana Two's costumes. I think it works well, and you can kind of tell what episode it is from. Something that you may have noticed is mine seems to be teetering off to the side ever so slightly. I believe the joint in the leg is ever so slightly further out than it should be, so probably that will be fixed in the future, hopefully. But for now, she's kind of doing her best Leaning Tower of Pisa impression. Taking a closer look at the costume itself, and we start off with a little bit of a complaint, because I'm not going to lie, I'm not a fan of the coat. I think that overall the finish on it just isn't very nice. It hasn't been given a wash or a little bit of weathering on top to make it look a bit worn. Instead, it is just one block colour of red. It's been sculpted in red plastic and it's remained like that, and as a result it looks quite plasticky and waxy, and there's not really too much going for it, which is a shame, especially given that the previous version of Romana uses exactly the same sculpt as this. However, it was much more effective. Of course, that was Romana from Destiny of the Daleks. Of course, the actual coat from the Horns of Nimon was much longer, it had lapels, and it definitely looked a little bit better than this one. I think that even a highlight, a black trim running around the side emphasising the lapels, may have worked a bit better, or simply a brushstroke wash applied over the top of it, just to make it look less plasticky. We do have a few additional details that weren't there before, the first of which is a number of buttons there running down the middle, which have been applied using a burgundy looking paint application. Flipping around to the back, a rather similar thing applies, once again due to this using a Sarah Jane based body. Of course we get the inclusion of that coat belt there, and we also get two additional dots representing buttons on the back, and even more creases and wrinkles. Within the serial, Romana does of course wear what looks like red leather gloves, and as a result this time round, the hand paint application has been changed from the natural skin tone colour to that of red instead, an ever so slightly different shade to the coat, which again is nice to have a little bit of variation. Although admittedly, you can kind of see the ring that has been painted over, but hey, we won't look at that. Sliding back the coat slightly to take a look at the costume underneath, this is where things get much better, because we have this absolutely lovely design trying its best to replicate the costume as seen throughout the stories. As a result, we get the inclusion of a cream cardigan, and some really lovely detailing has applied to this, including this midsection in the very middle, as well as a number of buttons running up the side. And then from there, we also have the inclusion of the white frilled shirt, and a lighter grey design has been applied over the top of this to create the impression of frills, as well as a number of buttons. The only thing that I'm a little bit unsure on is the way that the white paint application kind of also seeps over into the neck. It kind of makes it look like she's dipped her neck in white paint. It looks okay, I kind of get what they're going for, that the frills are meant to be going up rather high onto her neck section. However, it doesn't particularly look 100% normal, but I don't mind too much. It's definitely much better than the coat. I really do like it. Moving further down the costume, we have the inclusion of that sculpt of leg once again. It's appeared within this video that much it may as well be paying rent by this point, but this time round it has been painted a creamish colour to in keep with the costume underneath the coat, which again is alright, it's effective, and I don't mind the reuse of sculpt. To complete the costume, we have the inclusion of the boots. This time round, they've been painted what looks like a glossy black or maybe a very dark blue, finishing the look rather nicely. Exactly the same compliments apply to this sculpt that did with the first variation of Romana, because this is exactly the same sculpt, and as always, looks incredible. They've got the likeness to Lala Ward absolutely spot on, along with all the other companions within this collector's set. From what I can remember, the paint application may have changed ever so slightly. Much like all the other companions within this collector's set, a lot of focus has gone on to that paint application around the eyes and the facial features. The lips have been painted a rather vibrant red, and the eyes also have lots of detailing and intricate small lines within the eyes, really creating that feminine look that she's almost applied makeup. And then we of course have the eyebrows in there as well, which have been replicated by using a simple light brown line. Flipping around to the sides of the sculpt, of course, we get the continuation of the hair, and once again, we have a much better finish to that of what appears on Sarah Jane within the collector set, as we have a base colour overall of blonde, and then this darker wash has been applied over the top of a light grey. Again, I believe that this is ever so slightly darker compared to the initial version, but simply by adding that wash over the top, it brings out some of those details within the strands of the hair ever so slightly more than it would have if this was just a regular sculpt of one block colour. So yes, overall, a great likeness to Lala Ward, and it is just as brilliant as the original release, although there is a little bit of a gap on the shoulders due to this time round her no longer coming packaged with the scarf, unlike the Destiny of the Daleks version. And there we have it, second variations of Sarah Jane, Romana One and Romana Two. I think that this set is definitely a mixed bag, however overall is definitely one worth adding to the collection, especially if you are a fan of these companions. I absolutely love the fact that we have finally figures of these companions to add to the shelf after wanting them for so long. I think that the likenesses are superb. I can't wait to see what else holds within the future of this series. I'm looking forward to see what companions they decide to release next, because I'm really hoping that we do get to see more in the future. And to be honest, I've got a feeling that even then, this isn't the end for these sculpts. I think we'll see quite a few more variants in the future. It would be really cool to maybe even have a Big Finish Gallifrey series variation of Romana Two and Gallifrey in robes, but hey, I think that might be something that might never happen, but I can dream. And with that, that concludes my review of the Doctor Who B&M exclusive Companions of the 3rd and 4th Doctor action figure collector set, featuring Sarah Jane from the Monster of Peladon, Romana One from the Power of Kroll, and Romana Two from the Horns of Nimon. Overall for this collector set, I think that it is definitely a mixed bag, and I would be lying if I said that this set was better than the original version. I think that by far Romana Two and Sarah Jane from the initial box set are much better than the ones featured within this collector set. This set is worth it alone for that new variation of Romana One. To be honest, I actually have a little bit of an inkling in my head. I think that this was the original intended Romana, and then they kind of thought, let's put in the other one first within the other set, so then there's an incentive to buy the second one, which admittedly, although it is nice and does feature some decent variations of costume, I think it's just not as exciting. This is without a doubt going to be one of the highlights of this wave that have been released alongside the 5th Doctor and TARDIS and the History of the Daleks collector sets 3 and 4. So if you manage to go to your local B&M stores anytime soon, I definitely recommend adding this set to the priority list, because I imagine a lot of people are going to be wanting it. Paint application changes to the likenesses are welcome, and once again the sculpts are absolutely incredible. So thank you very much for watching this review. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on the Horns Productions for brand new Doctor Who content each and every week, from Big Finish reviews, product reviews, book reviews, and much more, as well as of course the continuation of this B&M review series. So thank you very much for watching, have a nice day, stay safe, I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.